we're ready. Your little gizmo. Joe and his wife Tanya have been married for over 20 years. They have 3 adult children. Joe is a speaker, consultant, writer. As a speaker, Joe delivers an unforgettable message about living and the power of the human spirit. He invites each of us to meet life head on, finding the path to thrive, not just survive, in the face of difficult circumstances. He says, my life seemed to be going nowhere, trapped in addiction and with a severe learning disability that kept me isolated and alone. It seemed I would always just drift and barely survive. Instead, my life has become a beautiful story filled with meaning, love, and triumph. Although life continues to hand me challenges that feel insurmountable, my love for my God, my family, and my life grows stronger every day. Let's give Joe a warm welcome.
How many of you honestly know that January is mentoring month?
You know it now.
You know it now, because I just told you. I found out last week. I gave this talk, somewhat of this talk last week, and I had to pay attention to some of the things that were said, and I had to retool it. And when I was retooling it, I found out that January is mentoring month. Thank you, Google. I would have known that. How many of you honestly know Toastmasters has a plethora of information on mentoring at toastmastersinternational.org? And there's a big section on tools that are given for people that want to talk about mentoring at their club level. When I joined Toastmasters, it was in 2000. Rick Foshing was assigned to me to be my mentor. I didn't know what a mentor was really. I just had a vague idea of what mentoring was. Because part of you mostly already know is I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Been a member for over almost 40 years now. And part of Alcoholics Anonymous is mentoring. You have a sponsor and you sponsor people and you pass on the knowledge that you've been given, and that works. So I've had an idea, and I thought that's what Rick was going to be, was my sponsor. And he lined out, he said, you're going to do 3 speeches, and you're going to do them here, here, and here. And he already scheduled them for me. He said, you're on the schedule, this can be emailed out, be ready for it. And the first one, obviously, is your icebreaker. How many people live in fear? Do you have a fear? Mine's rejection. I stand up in front of you. I've been doing it for almost 50 years now. But I have a fear of rejection. What's your fear? And most of those fears that people name, in your head, you're starting to tick off, spiders, blah, 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 agoraphobia, fear of outside, all that. When you start getting down into the roots and nuts and bolts of all those fears, they have a lot to do with public speaking. When you Google up people's fears on Google, when I found out that mentoring was there, I also found out that public speaking is somewhere around death and public speaking. Not sure which one scares people more. And Rick was assuming that was my problem. That's not quite true. My first public speaking paid gig was in 1983. Got paid to speak, it's been doing it ever since. So at my icebreaker, I told Rick I was going to talk a little bit about, and I was just going to probably focus on one story. The story is, 6th grade, Mrs. Brooks' class was my homeroom teacher at Wilson Middle School on Main Street in Bozeman, across from where Wilson School Building is. And I had to talk about Big Red. Like people know the old story about Big Red, the big red dog, stuff like that. I read the book, had my note cards, and I was ready to do it. Because in the front row of that class is the girl that I was in love with. She lived a mile above me up Bridger Canyon. And I'd ride the bus with her, and I'd look at her, and I had a chance to dazzle her. So I was ready. I practiced. I was ready. Mrs. Brooks said, Joe, come on up. I had my good-looking corduroy jeans on. I had my good-looking shirt on. I had my note cards. But the problem was I was horribly bucked tooth. Really bad buck teeth. So I had to really practice, because with really bad buck teeth, you don't enunciate very well. So I really had to practice, and I was ready. I go up in front, and I'm standing up in front of the class, and there she is. The cutest girl in the world, in my eyes. And I'm starting to talk. I'm not to the funny part yet, and people are laughing. And it's like, oh, that's not good. And then she leaned out of her desk and said, Joe, your zipper's down. And I looked. I look at the note cards. I look at Mrs. Brooks. And I sit down. That was my introduction to public speaking. And hundreds of thousands of people have that same problem. Maybe not be the zipper, but it's like that intense, oh my God, I'm going to screw up. That's what we face. When we are working with people in Toastmasters, that intense feeling, you all know what it felt like to be an 11-year-old kid in front of your class with your zipper down. You know what that felt like. I didn't have to describe it. You knew it. That's what we face when we have people that are brand new to our club. And that's what I was facing, because one of the things that Rick also did is he nominated me to be the Sergeant at Arms for the Gallatin Valley Toastmasters in 2000. So people were calling me saying, hey, I want to come join Toastmasters. What I would tell them is, I think that's awesome, because Toastmasters is a really good way to do things. It teaches you some of the things you need to know. But I want you to know, Gallatin Valley Toastmasters at that time was the club. Most of the best speakers in the valley were in that club. And they were winning most of the competitions in the areas, in the district and all that stuff. They were winning. It's an intimidating club to walk into and speak. So I would tell them, Toastmasters is just like Baskin Robbins. There's flavors. Please come check our club out. It might be your flavor. But if it's not, there's other clubs, and they may be the flavor you like. Don't get just stuck on the one that you think that you need to belong to because you called them first. That's why I started to try to help people, was to get that guided in. Rick was a really good mentor. He taught me some things I needed to learn. But are you willing to listen to the person? Because if you're not willing to listen to them, you need to change. Either you need to change yourself, that you're willing to listen to that person, or maybe you need to change mentors and find someone you're willing to listen to. Because I hadn't spoke for a while. I was busy raising kids. So I had gotten unpolished. I'd forgotten some things, forgotten how to dress correctly and all that stuff. So I had to relearn some things, and I had to be willing to listen to Rick. But I want you to know something. Don't just take those lessons and leave them at the door of Toastmasters. Take them outside. Because there's lots of people besides Toastmasters, people that need to learn what we're teaching in here. Because if we can start overcoming our fears, how cool is that? It's really, really cool. For instance, I was shopping. I had to go buy about $1,100 to $1,400 worth of stuff. I went to Staples to start shopping over there by Albertsons. Walked in the door, the first guy that greeted me was like, "Hey, welcome to Staples, what can I do for you?" I said, "Well, we need some help because we need to buy these things." And I listed off what we needed to buy. And I said, "Well, there's nobody here to help you right now, I'm sorry. We're short-staffed." And I said, "Okay, then we're gonna leave and go to the other store." He let us walk out that door. We went to the other door, we went to other Staples by Target. Now, what's the smart thing to do? The smart thing to do is honestly tell the manager of that Staples store what had just happened at the other Staples store so he can alert the manager there that he let $1,400 walk out the door. And we did that. Me and the girl that I work with, we let that manager know. I learned how to do that because Toastmasters taught me how to talk. That's how it happens. We start teaching people how to talk. And I'm encouraging you to start teaching people how to take those lessons outside of Toastmasters. Please do that. Some of y'all know my dad is Jess Lair. My dad wrote a book that sold a couple million copies back in the 70s called I Ain't Much Baby, But I'm All I've Got. Along with that, he and a guy by the name of Bill Gove, who somewhat gets nominated for being the grandfather of the current resurgent of public speaking, Bill Gove gets attached to that name. Bill Gove's was a gifted speaker, and he and my dad were best friends. Bill Gove's the one that named I Ain't Much Baby, But I'm All I've Got. And he and my dad used to pal around in Minneapolis at Toastmasters clubs in the late 50s and early 60s. And Dad and him were good friends. Problem my dad faced were lots. My dad was a good guy, but he had his issues. And one of the issues was he didn't like to listen. My dad was brilliant. Brilliant, very, very brilliant. And one of the things that's true as I started working with my dad in the late 80s is I get slammed for this and I'm gonna get slammed again, I'm willing to get slammed. I've never met anybody that's too stupid to be mentored. But I've met some personalities that are too smart to be mentored because they think they know it all. And that was my dad. We got hired to go to a dentist conference in Wisconsin. We were gonna do the Friday night kickoff, Saturday workshops, and then the Sunday we're leaving conference, the get together. Friday night, my dad started talking. And he talked, and he talked, and he talked. And as I'm watching him talk, I'm watching the crowd. And he's not getting the cues back from the crowd. People say things are different today. And I wanted to argue that because I can tell you right now that the same people that are sitting in front of me today are the same similar personalities that are sitting in front of us, my dad and I, in 1988. People don't really change that much. The personalities are still there. Sure, we have tablets. Sure, we have phones. Sure, we have all that stuff. But people had notebooks, and they could pencil in their notebook, and they could do all that stuff to distract themselves and to stop from being bored and fall asleep. And my dad wasn't reading that. He was just talking. He got done. The guy that brought us and paid for us to be there gave my dad the check and said, "Thank you for coming, but we don't need you anymore." He got fired. And a lot of that had to do with my dad wasn't willing to listen. When I was a kid, just after I got done with Mrs. Brooks' 6th grade class, I also got to go to where Chief Joseph is now. It was called the Bozeman Junior High School. And I met Mrs. DeBach. In the second week of class, Mrs. DeBach sat me down and she said, "You've been coasting by on D's." She says, I know you're smarter than that because I've watched you already for 2 weeks. So I want you to know right now that you're not going to get through this class on a D. You have to get a C or better, or I won't let you go. Right around Christmas time, she met with me again. And she says, something must be going on because I watch you. And I know you're not making it, and I know you're trying. She said, what I want you to do is she took me over a turnstile, tall turnstile that had all these little, dime novel books. She says, I want you to read one book a month and give me a book report on it. I don't care what the book is, I don't care what you read, just read those books. I started reading Louis L'Amour. How many people know who Louis L'Amour is? Yeah. I started learning about heroes. And Mrs. DeBach introduced me to those books. And for that, I'm always grateful. Because in my introduction, it says, I'm learning to say, and that's true. Because when people say, hold up into your hand and make an L, I hold up my hands, I look at those 2 L's, I don't know which one's L, even today. Sure, I know this one is because I've just learned that I only wear things on my left hand. That's why I know L. But look at them, they're still the same to me. I got dyslexia. I got ADD. Mrs. DeBach, we didn't know what that was in those 60s and 70s. But she did get me to read. And so I'm talking to Dad on the way back from Wisconsin, I tell him, you know what, Dad? You are my hero. But you're failing in one huge area. Every hero I've ever read about in those books always had somebody that taught them things. And you don't have a teacher. And if you don't get a teacher, you're not going to be able to recover from this. And my dad did follow a little bit of direction. And at the end of his life, when I got to be with him on his last day, yeah, he did. We did get to be friends. He did follow that hero, but he still was unwilling to take direction at times because he thought he knew better. And that's my biggest fear is there's the beginning of the mentoring relationship, there's the middle of the mentoring relationship, and there's the end. I'm towards the end. I'm 60. But I want to finish strong. And that's what my whole talk that I'm working on and following through with is how am I going to finish strong? So I used to tease Dad, it's like, Dad, you pulled a hamstring at the freaking end of the race. Really? That's just stupid. But I don't want to do that either because I don't want to be that guy that pulls the hamstring at the end and makes the mistake. Because I've seen so many of these huge leaders. Even in today's environment, we still see these huge leaders that are just not listening. And is that good? It's not. I've given talks before, is the loudest voice the correct one? No, it's not always the correct one. What my dad taught me at the end was really strong. To watch him have to walk away from that. Yeah, he got paid, but he was embarrassed. The other story that I have also is we got paid about a month later to be up at Helena. He and my mom, I took them up to talk, and they didn't promote my mom, they just promoted my dad. We walked into the auditorium to get ready to start talking, and nobody was there. Nobody showed up. He had 2 back-to-back things. And that's the big thing I have to pay attention to is, are you really listening? Because when I was working with Rick, I had to decide, is he going to be my coach or is he going to be my mentor? Because in a coach, it's a whole different relationship. But in a mentor relationship, it's side by side, hand in hand almost. But it's my journey. It's not Rick's journey. Rick didn't want to make me into Rick Foshing Jr. He said, what is it that you have to say? What is it that you want to share? What is it that you want to say? He made it real clear to me. It's my journey. It was up to me. The other one is, he said, I need to have the boundaries. What is it that you aren't comfortable with? Because he said, I can't take you somewhere you're not willing to go. Where is it that you want to go? I'll take you there. He says, I can't teach you what you're not willing to learn. What is it that you want to learn, and I'll teach you that. And he laid out these really nice ground rules. And he said the main thing is, if you pay attention to the feedback that's negative, it's going to make you weaker. But if you accentuate the positives, that will pull you higher. And I learned that long ago in business. People understand that, you need to raise the high end of their sales. Bring the sales up, the values come with it. But I needed to be actively participating in that relationship with Rick. I'm the one that needed to initiate the stuff. I'm the one that needed to be calling him. I'm the one that needed to be saying, Rick, what about this? What about that? What about that stuff? I was the one that had to be contacting Rick. Rick wasn't the one that was contacting me. He would check in and say, can I help you? He wasn't being directive. He was just saying, can I help you? So that's the main question. What can Toastmasters be of help with in the Gallatin Valley? And I think it's a lot. I really do. When you look at that stuff that's up there on Toastmasters International's webpage on mentoring, it's a lot of information. And it can be of huge value to the Gallatin Valley and to the leadership of the college. So thank you.